How was that? Are there any outstanding questions still about the vows? Yeah.
We have a couple
One through,
like ones
yes.
we thought would be helpful to clarify.
Yeah, let's do it.
Stealing from the three jewels.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't sure, we know we talked about it a little bit more last week, but whether there was ever kind of justified stealing.
Yes.
And then the other one we had questions about was like forcing an ordained person to give up their vows and like what that actually is.
Yeah. Cool. So for the first one, stealing something from the three jewels. So you could think about that as any spiritual center that is giving away true dharma, as in a true philosophy that could help people free themselves from suffering. That's one way to think about three jewels, or you think about it as anything dedicated to the three jewels, like dedicated to a Buddha, an enlightened being, dedicated to the body of the teachings, or dedicated to a spiritual community that's embarking on those teachings. So anything dedicated to those items, you steal it. That would be breaking this vow. And the intention behind it, right, is I want it for me. It's mine. So there is a mental affliction behind the intention, right? Either you're jealous or you're angry or pride is a mental affliction, right? Mental affliction being anything that's bothering your state of mind. So that would be how to commit that vow. There is an exception there, which is if you're stealing it with the intention to actually help someone or to preserve the Dharma, for example. So the example I think of there often is what I imagine must have happened in Tibet during the invasion as people had to flee. They took things with them, right? They took things from monasteries or whatever they could, teachings, artifacts, and such. That wouldn't be breaking this vow because in their mind, they're taking that with the intention of preserving it so others can access it. So not breaking this vow. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's that one. And then you said disrobing someone. Yeah. So there's a couple of parts to that. So remember with this one we talked about these vows were originally designed, they're completely applicable to us as we think of ourselves as busy, important people, right? But they were designed for busy, important people, like rulers of kingdoms and such, princes and kings. So people that actually did have the power to go to other places and disrobe people. And that could mean physically, like it means you could literally take someone's, disrobing being taking away a mark of a promise they've made about the way they want to live their life, right? And it's a public representation of that. So it's physically removing those or forcing them to give back their vows somehow, which is a thing that would happen as well. So that would be the physical,
So not like manipulating somebody into doing something that would mean they broke one of their vows.
No, that is also not good,
yeah.
for sure. But that's not a root vow.
Okay.
That's not a root vow. I'm trying to think if that comes at all. It's not really the flavor of any of the root vows. It feels like a secondary vow. It definitely feels like a way to damage your own practice of morality by, right, manipulating someone. Like, actually, a flavor of it will come today of basically dishonor, trying to convince others that the promises they've made aren't important or won't get them anywhere. That we're going to talk about that today because that does come up. Yeah.
I think our group got stuck a little bit when we were discussing 6 and we got to the 3 spiritual paths. Like when we started discussing the listeners, the question was kind of like, so we recognize that listeners like hear but they can't put into practice. So like who would listeners be? Like the question was like, is that us? Are we listening? Can we not put it into practice? Since like one of the other paths is Mahayana. So like are those people who just haven't
So don't overthink it. Listeners it's like a very technical scriptural term, and it just means that they can hear Mahayana teachings. They say they can even teach Mahayana teachings, but they themselves can't practice them. So they can hear about the wish for enlightenment for the sake of all beings. They can hear about why compassion is the key to everything. They can hear about the 6 perfections, and they can even transmit that. But in their own practice, they are practicing a Hinayana path, which is to achieve nirvana. And we'll review those scopes today. before we get it. Does that make sense? So think about what we're doing here is very much Mahayana.
Very much.
Mahayana. Whether or not you know it, you are being tricked into associating love and wisdom inextricably in your minds. Like that's what happens if you come to Three Jewels enough. You hear love, you think wisdom. You hear wisdom, you think love. Two parts of the Buddha's mind. That's kind of what we're doing. It's saying you want everything you could ever imagine.
I'm just confused about, but the ones who are aspiring to or have achieved nirvana are in a different, parallel path?
It's not parallel necessarily, it's a different scope. So the paths are defined by the motivation of the goal. So the goal of the Hinayana path, and we're going to get into this, is nirvana. Personal nirvana.
What is nirvana again?
What is nirvana?
Enlightenment.
What's nirvana?
Permanent cessation of all suffering. Mental
afflictions.
Cool. Permanent cessation of all mental afflictions. So
Free of mental affliction.
completely free forever of mental affliction. So it's not just, oh, I had a good day today. I didn't get
But
any.
you're not concerned with everyone else's enlightenment.
Correct.
On that path, no, you don't have that motivation. You are in your own permanent cessation of mental afflictions. That's nirvana.
And then, if someone's enlightened or wishes enlightenment to everyone else, does that include mental afflictions? Or
Yes. So they
could I
say,
be enlightened and keep mental afflictions?
no, you're like oil and water. You don't get to keep any of the mental afflictions. You don't want to keep them down. No, they're like oil and water
I
in a
mean, they
Buddha's
could be
mind.
really interesting.
Nope. You don't get any of
Malcolm,
them.
I never would have walked it. I mean,
No, it's they're permanently gone, and it's saying I want to do that, and I want others to experience that too. I don't want to just be in my own world, completely free from anger and pride and jealousy by myself. It'd be cool if my friends were there too.
I didn't say anything about by myself.
That's what nirvana implies, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's the primary differentiator.
Exactly. Bodhichitta is the differentiator. Nirvana plus bodhichitta, you get enlightenment.
Perfect.
Yeah, in some places you'll hear them interchangeably. Here we say partial enlightenment or nirvana versus full enlightenment, Buddhahood.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're going to go over that distinction again today. Actually, any other questions about 1 through 8?
Could you also interpret that one about the three different
Scopes?
Yeah. So as the three different ways the Buddha taught, the three different, I guess we call them schools or not?
Yeah.
Or is it more specific than that?
It's more specific, but it's related. It's like many maps that sort of overlap, but not exactly. We get into it in ACI7 because there's 3 turnings of the wheel, which map to like 7 schools of emptiness, which map to 3 motivations and 3 like it's all these things. It's my favorite course. But yeah, so they're overlapping maps, but not exactly on top of each other.
I'm forgetting words.
Me too.
Whoever it is that has or wants nirvana, isn't it in a way that, like, wouldn't that be like false dharma, kind of?
No, so false dharma, the way it's appearing in these vows, is literally
Only for someone who took the vows.
Yes.
But I mean, in a weird way, the pursuit of nirvana exclusively sort of seems selfish. I mean, it sort of seems like a real contradiction.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so because you're still when you're battling your mental afflictions, right? You are battling every bad thought you have about others or yourself. Like it's a very high motivation to want to achieve nirvana. It's saying really like I'm gonna stop looking out there and battling the people that look different from me, or yelling back at the angry boss, or moving around the pieces of my external reality. I'm gonna change the lens, look inside, and clean it up. That's the motivation for nirvana. It's a really high aspiration, actually. It's different. Yeah.
That's enough. I mean,
It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful motivation. Yeah.
right, but anyway, anyway,
Yeah.
that was helpful.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. So we're ready to do how many left? Root vows? 9. So there's 18 in total, 9 and 9.
99.
Just 18. What did I want to start with?
Class
We actually just we sort of reviewed all of this. I wanted to bring us back to this fun image. And remember, the only thing deserving of our anger, right? The only thing deserving of our animosity are these mental afflictions. And you get excited as a bodhisattva to actually fight these, to fight those states of mind that hurt us. And that, again, keep us locked in this prison of me and mine and my world, right? And what's cool about this, I realized this after class, I was like, I hope it wasn't too much of a downer. Because this is actually a really freeing thing, right? Once you recognize that your only true enemy is inside, you get some power. Like, that realization gives you power because it means no one else can really mess with you. Like, you're messing with you all the time. But, right? Like, you're actually deciding to take the power, you're deciding to completely take the power inside and be like, I'm going to look inside and clean it up. Because that's the only thing that could really hurt me. There's nothing out there that could actually hurt me. And I know that sounds like that's a big statement, and we'll break it down over class, but hopefully this gives you a sense of, well, thank God it's this way, because if there was really something out there that could hurt me, then I'm screwed. Then I should care about me and mine, right? And make sure I get the things I need and stay protected in my little area. Because then it's a scary world. But this way, it's an internal. You can deal with these. They're you. They're not you, but they're inside you. But anyways, I wanted to also remind us the flip side of this. As real as your mental afflictions feel, and I know they feel real. I mean, they do to me, especially those days you just wake up and you're like, God, why am I so pissed at the world for no reason, right? Or depressed or anxious, fill in the blank, whatever it is, your demon. As real as that is, and that working with that is this wish, and you've had it if you're in this room, of, I think it could be a different way. I think there's something more. You know, if you've ever been in love, you know that. If you've ever been loved, you know that, right? That there's something else here that we're all going around. And I feel it sometimes when you just catch eyes with someone on the subway, like a stranger, right? And for a second you can just drop the like masks we're all wearing of like, this is who I am, this is my identity, it's how I adorn myself. And it's just like, we're just people, and you're just connecting over something. That feeling, it's the most powerful thing in the world. That type of love is what we're talking about when we say love inextricable with wisdom. Not just love inextricable with wisdom. So it's love informed by the way things really work, the way things really are, not the way that things seem. Right? So the other way you can tap into it, I'm sure you've had these moments where, think about those moments where you had to get through something very difficult, and where your mind went to get through that difficult moment. Small example, if you've ever practiced with my yoga teacher, she does this thing where she makes us hold poses for a long time. Like, she'll put us in camel, and then she'll say, stay for 5 minutes, stay for 9 minutes, you can stay for 10 minutes. And we do that. And for me, it's a gift to get that type of direction, because what does your mind have to do to stay in something that feels like it's ripping you apart? Right? Like, after you get over the shock of, oh my God, my body's in this position, you tap into something like, okay, I'll do it for someone else. I'll figure it out. I just changed the mantra in my head. It goes from, I can't do this, this hurts, I can't do this, to, I love you. You just stay in the pose, and you're just like, I love you, and it's the only thing that can get you through it. Right? Or like dentist chairs. Maybe this happens to you there too. When someone's drilling into your, like, where does your mind go to protect you? right? There's that, I don't know if people are looking at me confused with the dentist chair thing. Think about mothers in labor, right? Like,
Oh my God.
it's incredible pain. And if you ever look at them, it's just love in their eyes. Because they're not doing it for themselves, right? They're doing it for someone else. So that's the type of power I'm talking about, that sort of force that we all have access to. I haven't given birth ever. I'm just assuming that feeling
Yeah,
is.
I watched my wife twice, and it wasn't love the whole
There's moments of it.
There were moments.
You just need moments
where
of it.
She would catch my eye. There was definitely no love. She wanted me dead. 9 months earlier, she wanted me dead.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So and that's the practice then, because that, right? So when we say a mind imbued with bodhicitta, that's the practice. Is like you hang on to that one moment, you felt it, and the idea is to sustain it. There's something powerful when you can sustain that state of mind with every single person you meet and every situation that you're in, and it's opposite to the way we are trained to go around the world. I totally understand that. I feel it like a way I feel it is like, in subway platforms on rush hour when like it seems like the whole crowd is coming this way and you have to go you're the one person who has to go up the stairs. It's that feeling, but it really is that. It's redirecting the energy of your life force for this goal. Because there's something there, you think. There's something to that love, that wisdom. So we'll get more into that. Okay. That's the only memes for today. Okay. This is not a homework question, but it's going to come up over and over again in the second 9 vows. We sort of talked about it, but I want to clarify it here. When we use these terms, what they really mean, right? So, here, when you hear Hinayana, right? Have you heard of this before? Hinayana versus Mahayana? You might have heard of it. So remember, yana, does anyone remember what yana means? We did it quickly last week. Vehicle, nice. Yana is vehicle. Hina is lesser. Maha, greater. Right? Vehicular capacity, we'll get to. But exactly, so Hinayana is a lesser scope. And don't think of this as like a quality judgment, right? As like lower, like better and worse. It's not like that. It's just the scope or the goal that you have. And Hinayana is a very high goal, as I said before. To have the goal of wanting to avoid a lower realm rebirth, there's a lot of implications there, right? If you have this desire in your mind, that means, one, that you actually acknowledge that there are past and future lives. So they say, like, most people in the West wouldn't even qualify as Hinayana practitioners because the prevailing notion is like, at death, boom, everything stops. I didn't really think about it too much. I didn't entertain it too much, and I don't know what was in your mind, but that is sort of that culturally, that's kind of the prevailing notion. To be a Hinayana practitioner, you at least have to have some confidence in this is not it. Something else is coming, and it's coming based on what I do here. And so you get really preoccupied with, I don't want to come back as a bug. I don't want to come back as a squirrel. It's that, yeah.
What about like heaven versus hell?
What about it?
Like, I think there's a lot of people who believe not necessarily that they'll be reborn in like a physical manner, but there is some sort of afterlife experience.
Yeah.
And
Are you asking, would they be Hinayana practitioners?
I don't think they would be.
Yeah, so the way I think about heaven and hell is that it's still in the cycle of suffering. It's still in the cycle of misunderstanding and of seeing the world through the box of you, whatever that you is. Heaven is a slightly better version of that. Hell is a slightly worse version of it, right? So, but the lesser scope, so you see what that is saying, that you're still subject to the cycle of samsara here. You're just saying, at least I don't want to come back any worse. Let me
Come
at
back
least,
what?
I don't want to come back any worse. Let me at least come back still as a human. And then I'll try again. That's part of what they're saying.
What's worse than a human?
So worse
A
in
smaller
that,
animal?
yeah, worse in your capacity to get enlightened. So it's harder for an animal to get enlightened. That's all we're saying. Again, not a value judgment. Animals are great.
So, Supriya, when we're talking about this, like, to me, yes, of course, for the sake of all beings, sounds way nicer and like way cooler.
Yeah.
But if you're talking to someone, like, would they be like, yeah, I practice like Hinayana Buddhism, and I recognize that it is like a lesser, seemingly more self-involved experience? Like, does that make sense to the question?
Like you would ask them that?
No, like, because like here it seems like they're kind of like, this is good, but this is better. And like, would someone who's practicing, or who would say like they're practicing Hinayana Buddhism be like, yeah, I recognize that there's something bigger and better? Or do they think that what they're doing is it?
Then they would do that one if they believe there was one that was better than some really.
Yeah.
Like, would they be looking at this same slide and being like, there's two different things?
Yeah. My way is the better way.
It's actually cool because it does come up in ACI 15. So ACI 15 is the art of interpretation, what the Buddha really meant. And that's this whole teaching around sometimes the Buddha was literal and sometimes he was figurative. And what's cool is if you were to ask a Hinayana practitioner, they'd say, well, all the times the Buddha was teaching Mahayana, he was being
What?
figurative.
All what?
All the times the Buddha was teaching Mahayana, all the times he was teaching compassion teachings, he was being figurative, right? And for Hinayana, that's a valid experience of reality. And just as validly, the Mahayana practitioner says, well, all the times the Buddha said, all you have to do is achieve nirvana, that was figurative. What's literal is our teaching, right? And there's room for both, which is what's cool. So I would say think about it less as you said, like less and better, and the scope or the motivation, like just me, or that's why vehicular capacity, just me, or can I carry more? So think about it that way. But nirvana, so lesser scope is still very high scope, higher than that medium scope, wanting to attain personal nirvana. That you're like, okay, get me out of the cycle. I don't want to come back as I don't even want to come back as a human. I don't want to do this again. There's not enough in this realm, in this broken realm, that's going to do it for me. It doesn't matter if I get the perfect boyfriend or the perfect job or the next promotion or it's going to all end, and you recognize that. So you say, get me out of the cycle. I want to attain some sort of nirvana. And that's a beautiful motivation, and it's a beautiful set of practices around there. What we're talking about here is that when you hear higher way or Mahayana, the biggest vehicular capacity, how many people can I take with me? Because if I have to go through this, all you have to do is look up and see that everyone else is in the same boat. Like if I need to do it, why can't just take them along? Why not? That's one way to think about it. I mean, it's just, you're going to do all this anyways. Just expand your motivation a little bit, and big payoff. Full enlightenment. So that's what we mean when we say Mahayana. It's going against the impulse of let me go buy all the hand sanitizer at CVS before it runs out. Right, because I need to have some, in case we all get quarantined.
But really, you need to give it away.
I mean, and it just also practically makes sense.
Right.
How else are we going to protect the most vulnerable in society?
Yeah.
It's complete. Like if you think about it, even just a little, you're like, of course I should go and buy all of it and then give it away to the people that can't buy it.
Yeah.
It makes so much
And
sense.
people who are sick, so that they don't.
Exactly. It's that's Mahayana. Very it's beautiful that it seems logical. So is that clear? Because a lot of the vows are gonna reference this, so that's why I say this. Okay, beautiful. So now we're actually getting into the vows. And as I go through these, so now this my job is easy. I just get to say words and move my hands and tell some hopefully fun stories. It's your job to connect these with a practice that could get you to your personal enlightenment, right? Like, what does stripping someone of their robes have to do with you getting enlightened? You have to ask yourself that. And we'll talk about it as much as we can. But remember that these vows are stepping stones for your mind. It's literally those steps for your mind as you're running up the stairs in the opposite direction as everyone else, right? What are you stepping on? The ground that you're stepping on. These vows, that's what they are. They're saying, when push comes to shove, I made this promise. I'm going to do it. So you have to ask yourself that question. Okay, number 10. The good old root downfall of destroying towns and such. Don't forget the and such. Okay, this one, it's okay, remember again who these vows were designed for, right? It makes sense. These are designed for kings and rulers, people who had the power to destroy towns and such, right? And it's saying, hey, you want to create a literal paradise world for yourself? Don't take people's homes away from them.
Don't what?
Don't take people's homes away from them. Don't destroy their land. Actually, it's super applicable now in many ways, but yeah.
But can it be taken as little as a litter?
That's exactly where I was going. So this vow, I have like such a beautiful association with it. And this will start to happen to you all if you take your vows and you start practicing together. You get this like self-reinforcement network, right? You just know, okay, like I'm walking into the cafe, Lauren's there, like she knows what I promised to do. Like I better act in a certain way. And so this happened to me once. If you know me, I have these little scented toothpicks that are really fun that I often use. And I was on a train one day with Steven, who many of you know. And before we got onto the train, I flicked the toothpick in that little gap between the platform and the train, right, to go onto the tracks. And I didn't think anything of it. It was like natural instinct. I just did it. And it was so beautiful because he just had to look at me. He didn't even have to say anything. And with his eyes, he just looked at me and this vow popped into my head of like, oh, wait, destroying towns and such. And it's destroying towns and such. You can take it that subtle and that minute. Why? Because karma grows, right? Because the things that are...
The toothpick? I'm asking.
Yeah, no, exactly. So my mind recorded me doing that, right? Even though my intention wasn't, I'm going to litter the earth, right. It was a moment of carelessness and impulse, and it got recorded in my mind. 65 of those a second, they say, right? 65 mental movements a second. That was just one of the 64 thousands of careless mental movements I'm having. But what happens with karma is it doubles every day. It grows every day. It's a lot. I mean, of course climate changes. Of course or at least I am forced to experience a reality where that's happening. It starts with littering toothpicks. So yes, you can get that small with it, and that's how I use this one. It's protecting it can be your home, your city, any space you walk into. Are you like Carlos, the meditation teacher, who leave things better than the way you found them? It's like you learn all this stuff in kindergarten. And here we are, it's this beautiful exalted practice. But yeah, it's that. So the motivation here are any of the 3 poisons, which you see listed there: attachment, aversion, or ignorance. So it's destroying another place because you want to take it for yourself. That's the attachment piece. It's destroying someone else's country or home or property because you have hatred in your heart for them. Absolutely happens. Or out of straight ignorance, meaning you do not make the connection that if you are aware of destroying something in someone else's world, that will have an effect, that must have an effect for you. So of course you can't find that right apartment. Or of course you can't seem to ever have a clean space to live in. Where else do those things come from? So that's destroying towns and such. Yeah? Okay, this next one's good. I mean, they're all good. Okay. Root downfall 11. The root downfall of teaching emptiness to someone who is not yet mentally prepared.
Never heard of it.
It was literally They don't know her. She's not my friend. How do
Who?
you know when someone's mentally prepared?
Yeah, so this one, it's really beautiful. It's let me get to the full details. So,
Is there any way you can make that gray thing?
Yeah.
can you guys see it? This thing you mean?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I don't know why that's coming.
You can probably drag it somewhere, but then it'll still be there.
It's not usually there, right? Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Okay, so this is, again, it's a very specific vow, right? It's so don't just take it at face value. What it really it's specifically referring to is the person that you should not teach emptiness to should have these 3 qualities. So one, it says they should not have studied emptiness carefully. Like maybe they've never heard of this concept before. They haven't analyzed it before. Second, the way you describe emptiness to them somehow scares them or disturbs them. We'll break this down more, but let me just get through this. And then 3, this is really the crux of the vow. This is the reason it's a vow, is that they are someone who has this sprout of bodhicitta. Like someone's told them, hey, you can get enlightened for the sake of all beings. So they're starting to develop this wish of bodhicitta. And as a result of your teaching of emptiness, maybe it's incomplete, maybe it's incorrect, but as a result of it, they get scared and disturbed, and they actually abandon the wish. They say, I don't think I can do this stuff. That sounds too intense. That doesn't make sense to me. And in order for this vow to break, you actually have to see them, you have to see that full karmic path take place. You have to see yourself sharing a teaching and it flipping someone's mind to be like, oh, I don't think I can do Mahayana. I'm gonna switch to that Hinayana stuff. I'm just gonna pursue Nirvana. That full enlightenment stuff seems too scary. So that's specifically what it's talking about here. And the way I work with this is catch your motivation for why you're teaching someone emptiness. Like when I first heard the pen thing, I think everyone here has heard the pen thing. You've been at 3 Jewels, I see nods. I don't know if anyone, I feel like I actually did this with you, Brad. I went out to dinner a lot with friends and I was like, I'd pick up the knife on the table. I'd be like, so what is this? And I would just launch into it because it was this thing I had heard and I'm like, this is so beautiful, this is amazing. This means that the entire power of what happens to me is inside me. My entire world is up for transformation. I have to tell people about this, right? And that's a beautiful motivation, but I didn't know how to completely give an emptiness explanation, right? Like, for example, it's very dangerous, if not incorrect, to teach someone emptiness without talking about karma, right? Don't tell someone that your entire world is a blank screen up for interpretation and then not tell them how that comes to be, right? Not tell them that there's something in your mind forcing you to see it the way you do, right? You can't tell someone that things are empty, everything down from a pen to every sensation you experience in your body to the coronavirus to everything, right? You're going to just launch them into one of the 2 cliffs, they say. They're either going to launch them off the cliff of nihilism, of, well, okay, well then nothing matters. Everything's empty. Or they're going to freak out and go off the other cliff of, wait, they're gonna start grasping onto the reality of like, wait, no, things are real. This is really a laptop, always and forever, and for every being, right? And you're gonna swing them on that pendulum. It's just gonna keep going. So you have to be really careful. That's just one example. Don't teach emptiness without teaching karma.
What if you teach both and you teach it with bodhichitta and it still scares them?
Cool. Well, then you remember ACI7, how karma works, right? And what if I give someone bread with the intention of helping them and it turns out they're deathly allergic to gluten? Right? Did the allergic reaction come from my intention to do good? No. Like produces like. So I'm not going to get the result of an emptiness teaching with full intention in that moment. Right? That doesn't mean that if you really had the pure intention, you gave it the fullest explanation you could, you of course are going to get a beautiful ripening in the future. Of course you're going to receive emptiness teachings from everywhere. But in that moment, they might respond with, that's weird, or it doesn't matter how they respond, right? Because that's a different karma. It's an older karma ripening in that moment. So there's a time lag with this stuff. It's not like you say it and then it happens.
So then, them being scared and taking up Hinayana as a result of the teaching, that's also ripening from past karma, right? So then, why would the reaction matter in this case?
In this case, it has to do with the motivation. So it's like you want them to abandon the wish. That's part of it. And you see your mind, you see your mind complete that. And and again, remember, it's the effect on your mind.
Right.
So what effect is it going to have on your mind if you see people in your world starting to discount Mahayana and discount bodhicitta? Right? It's like damaging your spiritual body.
What will be damaging your spiritual life?
Seeing people give up this wish.
Sure.
Right?
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah? Okay. And this is something this is a long list. This is just 18. Remember, there's 46 more. And take the notes, ask the questions, get the details, but know that it's a relationship you're forming with these vows. Like, I've gotten to take this course twice, and then now I get to review them, like as I prep for this, and I'm learning new things about them as they apply in my life. So just take them as like this building block, and then you're gonna make it come to life as you put them into practice. Right, as you sit in the restaurants being like, what is this? Is it a knife or a chujo? So you'll make it real that way, so don't worry too much. Number 12, the root downfall of causing a person to turn back from total enlightenment. This is very specific again, and it's basically going up to someone and telling them, you can't practice the main activities of a bodhisattva, right? The 6 perfections. The 6 perfections are the main activities of a bodhisattva, right? So you go up to someone and you say, hey, you can't do those. Don't worry about those. And as a result of you saying that, they become convinced that they should abandon Mahayana and go to a Hinayana path. And I think this one, I work with this one a lot because the way it comes up for me is, what sort of advice do you give to the people in your world? When they come to you with those normal, real problems, right? This person's bothering me at work. My boyfriend's annoying. What sort of advice are you giving them? Are you giving them advice that would resolve that situation temporarily? Or are you giving them something that would actually free them from the misunderstanding that created the cycle in the first place? So that's the way I work with this. And I do it all the time. I mean, my roommate just the other day, she was very distraught after work because there's a translation issue going on. Like, she has people on her team that English isn't their first language, and she's like, Supriya, it's so frustrating. Like, we're not able to communicate. The wires are getting crossed. Nothing's getting done. And I was tired of doing the dishes or something. So without thinking, I was like, oh, well, have you talked to your supervisor? Right? Like, well-intentioned advice, I guess, but is that gonna what is that doing, that advice?
Helping people get fired.
Like, right? That was me on autopilot. That was me on the program, the old program that's running on the computer. What should have I have said?
Help them.
If you have
check in where you're not translating with other people.
Exactly, because the language they're speaking, it's not unclear inherently. For some people, it's their mother tongue. It's perfectly clear. So what I should have said is, hey, and again, you have to be sneaky about this, because not everyone, you can't hear, hey, there's this thing called emptiness. There's this thing called karma. You don't need to do that. You can be sneaky and be like, and so that's what I should have done. Maybe I even talk about the supervisor, but the next phrase I say is, I'm trying to get them to move their mind to where are places in my life that I'm unclear, that I leave things lost in translation. So only then would she have to experience that at work. Right? Do you see that connection? So that's how I use this. Is what sort of, am I giving spiritual advice, real spiritual advice? Meaning something that brings you out of the sufferings? Any of the three sufferings? Does anyone remember the three sufferings?
I have a question there. I don't mean to go nitty gritty here, but isn't it your karma to hear that coming from her? So it's like you actually need to check where you're being unclear. You're hearing someone else complain about it.
But it doesn't mean that you can't address your projection.
Right. Because it'll only help you never experience that.
It's really beautiful because what you're asking is like, if the only reason I ever get fed is by putting food on your plate, then what's the difference between you and me?
What?
If the only way that what karma is saying is the only way I would ever experience food as filling me is if I fed someone. And if that's true, what's the difference between feeding myself and feeding someone else? In that way, it's not a me and others thing. It's one thing.
But wouldn't you even say that everybody in this room is now having the experience of you talking about that person? We're all having the karmic seed ripening that where are we being unclear in our lives?
If that translated for you, yeah, some of you might have tuned out that story and been like, that's a weird story.
It goes on and on and on and on to whoever hears that experience, whether it's firsthand or secondhand
Yeah.
or thirdhand.
And that's that's a shared experience that we, that's what, so it happened this weekend at yoga teacher training. Someone was like, oh, emptiness isn't a bad thing. It's like a beautiful thing, actually. Because the words I'm telling you are empty and the story is empty, could you have an experience of it? It's the reason things can express themselves as things. It's beautiful. Thank God things are empty. But yeah, you're right. Yes, you can get really meta with it.
You get crazy.
But yeah, for the purity of this vow specifically is referring to tell someone that they can't practice any of the 6 perfections, right? Hey, don't worry about not getting angry. Don't worry about trying to learn how to meditate. You can't forget that stuff. There's this other path over here. It's called Hinayana. You can do that. Yeah.
Is there a vow set for Hinayana that's do these so you don't get people to become Mahayana?
I don't think so. The primary vows associated with Hinayana practice are the pratimoksha vows, so individual freedom vows. So often I don't know if I should say this, because not every ordained person is Hinayana, but it has to do with the lifetime freedom vows of nuns and monks. So remember we saw that list, intermediate nuns, intermediate monks. So it's that stuff. I don't think they have vows around prohibiting people from being Mahayana, because then they could just become Mahayana.
But like I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious what like the specific belief set is.
Yeah,
That's like, oh, if I was teaching the Hinayana tradition,
what it would,
would
yeah.
I not go down this route because I might scare someone?
Yeah.
And they might want to save everyone.
Yeah. It's hard because, so Hinayana, Mahayana also have been tied up culturally, like with the way Buddhism spread, certain geographies happen to be Hinayana practitioners because that's the only philosophy that made it there, right? So it's not like they heard it all and they were like, oh, no, I don't want to get fully enlightened, let me do this thing. It's like that was the only thing that made it out of Tibet and reached them at that time. And they couldn't just WhatsApp each other like, hey, no, there's this thing over here. So that's the only thing they had access to. So then for Mahayana practitioners, you go and you discover a region like that. You actually have the power to disturb their minds. Then this vow makes sense, right? So I think that's also partly like something we should keep in mind. Hinayana, Mahayana is not defined by geography. It's defined by the scope and the motivation, but it is correlated with that. Okay, let's keep going. 13. The root downfall of causing a person to give up the morality of freedom. So we just talked about that. The morality of freedom, think about it as pratimoksha, individual freedom. So it's saying, you get someone to give up any of the sets of individual freedom or pratimoksha vows that they've taken. So this is interesting because, sorry, this gray thing's going to go away in a second. Now we're getting into the opposite flavor, right? We're saying, hey, Hinayana practitioner, give your vows back. Come do what I'm doing. Come become Mahayana. Right? Do you see that? Hey, give back. You don't need to be ordained. Give back your robes. Come over here and practice what I'm practicing.
So it's like if someone is practicing Hinayana, that's even if you're practicing Mahayana, that's okay that they're doing that, even if it's like it's still great.
It's beautiful, yeah, and you can definitely inspire a Mahayana motivation in them, but don't do it by telling them to go back on the promises they've made. Right? Why would you want to code your mind with, hey, the promises you made are not important?
And then just this link to the downfall of trying to get someone to give their vows back.
I think it's related, yeah. But this one goes one step further where it's give them back and follow me. Come with me. Yeah.
But don't we also have the pratimoksha vows in the Mahayana path? So why would we tell someone to give them up when we also have them?
Yeah. Remember, though, there's misconceptions, right? Even remember that question we had about tantric practitioners who said, oh, well, once you start practicing tantra, the secret practices of Buddhism, you don't need to practice your bodhisattva vows. You don't need your pratimoksha vows. So that was clearly a misconception even then, right? To which Je Tsongkapa says,
Absolutely.
like so much garbage, that's absolutely not the case. The higher you go in spiritual practice, actually the more insane you get about your vows, internally. The more precise and subtle you get. It's exactly the questions you're asking, like, is it this way or is it that way? How subtle can I get? Right? Because think about unchecked in your mind what that state of mind, what would it become? What would it snowball into? Right?
But I think if you break any of the pratimoksha vows, it's the potential to be born into any of the lower three realms. So you yourself could potentially be born into those realms as well if you're sending someone in that direction.
Yeah. So yeah, remember the effect it has on someone else, you don't know what it's going to do. But for you, your mind eats what you put out, right? All of a sudden, you are not going to be able to honor your promises or honor your commitments because you just told someone else they shouldn't honor theirs. This is any promise someone has made, right? Any vow someone has made. is how we can work with it now. The vow specifically is this. Do I have something else here? Okay, we talked about tantric practice. Yeah, the way I'd say I would work with this is in small ways, like, oh yeah, well you can study the vows, let's take the vows, let's do the ceremony, but we don't need to do our book. Like that 6 times a day book thing, that's annoying. Or any sort of practice that is designed to help you actually keep your vows.
I just think it's funny somebody would say that. It's like, who would say that?
Or maybe you think it. Maybe you think it, I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure but somebody could say it, I just think it's weird if someone said that to me.
Okay, that's 13, 14. Okay. The root downfall of holding that a person cannot eliminate desire and the rest by following the way of the learner. So here, code words. So eliminate desire and the rest is just a code word for nirvana.
What's a code word for nirvana?
Eliminate desire and the rest. Just means, is a synonym for nirvana.
Okay.
And the way of the learner is a synonym for Hinayana. So it's just saying, what this vow is saying is if you tell someone you can't actually reach nirvana by following the Hinayana practices.
You can't reach it by following what?
The Hinayana practices, right? So Hinayana would be the Buddha's, like the 4 Arya truths or the 4 noble truths is a classic Hinayana teaching. Or the 12 links of dependent origination in the wheel of life, classic Hinayana teaching. So if you say, hey, those things can't actually get you to nirvana, which is a lie, that's not, they are taught by the Buddha precisely to get you to that state. If you tell someone that and then they understand and believe you, that's how you break this. Yeah, and this is subtle. So if you remember, there was, I don't remember which vow, vow number 6, root vow 6, which we did last week. That has more to do with, there's a whole vow which is saying the entire Hinayana path was not taught by the Buddha, right? Just discounting that whole path. This one it's more subtle. It's saying, oh yeah, maybe he taught those things, but those things won't lead you to nirvana. They won't work. So you're getting at like all the shades that you can have in your mind.
Shade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can this also be true for someone that's not explicitly Hinayana, but like, for example, a Christian who has experienced their confirmation and baptismal vows?
So the way I would work with that is, if you were to break it, it wouldn't be breaking a bodhisattva root vow. It wouldn't have the implications that come with breaking a root vow, but it would have a strong effect on your mind. So that's the way you end up practicing these, because we're not going around in the world being like, okay, let me convince Hinayana practitioners that they can't get to nirvana, right? Like much more likely you might get into that situation where you see someone else in a different tradition practicing in a different way, and relate to them in a certain way. And that is, I think, how you would check yourself for this vow. But just know that for it to really be broken, this specificity has to be there. So it's, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but it's a really great question, because one of the traps you fall into as a Buddhist is thinking that the other religions aren't valid. And being like, oh, this is the right way, this is the right path for me, and you kind of forget that the other paths are valid for those people.
Yeah.
So you don't want to ever, actually that comes later, right? Disparaging other religions.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's a secondary vow. But yeah, I think you could totally use this flavor for that. And I think that's what we have to do. Yeah. Yeah. Especially any traditions you see where where vows are part of it. I don't know, for me this course was so cool because it helped me understand why would someone want to be ordained. Like I didn't really get it before. I was like, that's cool. But this now, whenever I see someone like that, I'm like, whoa, they saw something in reality. They saw the role that they play in their own reality, and they were so enamored by that they decided to make a promise and change their life, change the way they dress and what they do, just to reach that potential, just to try. And that goes for any tradition. So you can, I think, totally work with it.
Goes for any what?
Tradition. Okay, I think that's what I've got there. Okay. There is, this is a homework question, I forgot to make a slide, but there is an intermediate vow between 14 and 15, 14.5. Root vow 14.5. It's not actually given as a root vow because it has the same flavor as root vow number 1. What's the first root vow? Cool. So that 14.5 is just saying doing that specifically about a Hinayana practitioner. So specifically criticizing, saying a lie actually about a Hinayana practitioner so that someone praises you and your path. So some people say that, oh, that's vow 14.5, and some people say, no, that's just included in vow number 1. It's the same flavor.
Can you say it again, saying a lie about another?
About a Hinayana practitioner, like criticizing one, knowing that what you're saying is untrue because you want gain and admiration. So remember, the way we're getting this commentary on the vows to decode them, like all the vows were given by the OG Buddha in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and then all these commentators, right, gathered what he was saying in different places and then gave us commentary so we could actually work with them. So this was a little debate that came up of like, oh, is there a vow 14.5 or not?
Are all these Hinayana focused ones? I remember there were different authors for different numbers.
Yeah.
Are they all from like one person?
So
like, it just seems so reflective of like a time period.
Yeah, so all the first 4 root vows come from Master Asanga, I think. It's like all the root vows come from 2 of them and all the secondary vows come from others. So I don't remember exactly who it is off the top of my head. But I know Master Asanga was for some of the root vows at least.
Yeah, he was the first 4. Is that I remember?
Yeah, with the pairs. Yes, exactly. Yep. Okay, this one is good. Number 15 is the root downfall of professing the complete opposite. What do you think they are referring to?
Or the complete opposite of the previous vow.
Nope.
So, things do have nature.
Ish.
Of saying this is all wrong?
No.
Blind?
Tell us.
It's really specific. It's just saying that it's saying that you have seen emptiness directly when you know it's not true, and you say it with the motivation of, if I tell this person I've had this deep realization, they'll follow me and they'll do what I say.
Ooh. That's brutal.
Why do you know why they say that in that way though? Like what is that, how does that relate to that professing the complete opposite?
The complete opposite of saying you like the opposite of actually having perceived emptiness directly. Yes.
When you have perceived emptiness directly, aren't you supposed to not tell anyone?
That is what is said. And let's contextualize what the direct perception of emptiness is, because maybe not everyone has heard of that. So we've talked about emptiness as a concept, right? The fact that everything in our reality does not possess an inherent nature coming from its own side, as in radiating that thingness at me. That's not the way things work. is what emptiness is saying, is that things are empty of actually having that type of nature. And we can talk about that all day long. We can give the pen example, we can give the laptop example, the knife example at the restaurant. All of those are perceptions of emptiness, but they're intellectual perceptions of emptiness. And you can even meditate on it. It's a beautiful meditation to do, is meditate on the emptiness of any object you choose. What really the entire spiritual path, the pinnacle of it, everything that we're doing is to work towards creating a moment for ourselves where we actually experience it directly. In meditation, it's like reading about love, watching movies about love, seeing your friends fall in love, and then the first time you actually have a visceral experience of love. Right? No one can take that away from you, and it's probably very different from everything you've ever heard. It's an experience of it. And so that experience is said to change who you are as a being, because it changes the way you have to show up in your world. You start to have no doubt that the things you experience are unique to you and a reflection of what you've done in the past. No doubt at all. And you get really busy cleaning things up. And a whole bunch of amazing other things happen. But that's the experience we're talking about here. Experience of the divine. It's an extraordinary spiritual achievement. And so this vow is saying that you've had that experience when you haven't. And the motivation is to get someone to be your spiritual groupie, basically. Yes, to your question, most people don't have to say it because it's not about saying it. It's not about calling yourself it. It's about what you do with that experience. So I think about this a lot with my family, because my family isn't interested in me coming home when I go visit and becoming more and more Buddhist each time, right? What they're interested in is, am I a nicer person? They're interested in the type of person that you become, right? Then that's what you have to show for your Buddhist practice. It's not what you call yourself, it's not what others call you. It's who you are in your world. But so yeah, most people they don't talk about it to protect others' minds, because that experience is available to all of us. And there's a danger in revealing that you have or haven't had it, and then people thinking, oh, I have to go hang around that person, right? Because that's how I'll get it. They'll tell me what to do. You have to create that experience for yourself. They say it's meditation. You need to be able to enter deep meditation consistently, which means you need to meditate every day. You need to be studying this stuff. So like you guys are already doing it. Study is a part of it. Kindness. And I'm not just saying that like, oh, be a good person, but really the ultimate kindness that you can experience in your life is having this direct perception of emptiness. It's a gift. You get the key to the universe when you have that experience. So you have to code your mind with intense kindness or virtue to have that kind of kindness come back at you. There's no other way. So kindness and service, and then that also involves a relationship with the teacher. But we'll get into that some other time. Because we have 3 left. Oh, we have time. We're good. Is that cool? And I mean, I think there's so many vows, like you're right, that you're feeling that have to do with this understanding of emptiness. And I think it's just important to keep in mind that someone's spiritual knowledge is, it's really precious, right? Like it's the difference between having a projection of dying versus not. Like you're playing with really precious territory here. So just always err on the side of caution. Okay. Number 16 is the root downfall of accepting what belongs to the 3 jewels when someone presents it to you. So it's slightly nuanced from the earlier vow that we had about stealing things from the three jewels directly, like what Kelly was asking about, right? So that's an earlier vow, when you yourself steal things from the three jewels. This is like little nuance. Someone else has stolen them and gives them to you. That's also breaking a root vow.
Does that mean, back to our earlier question, it would be, even with a good intention, it would be pretty bad to take something and give it to someone else, because they would then leave, even if they have not taken vows, like.
Yeah. I think that exception would apply here too. It didn't say it explicitly, but I'd say if you were doing it for the sake of pure motivation, it would be okay. Which is what's also cool about these things, is that the only person who can check if you're keeping your vows is you. Like, you can't actually ever look at someone else and be like, oh, they're not a very good bodhisattva. They're not keeping their vows. Because you have no idea what's in their mind and why they're doing what they're doing. And you don't see someone being a good bodhisattva, well, it's always, whatever you point your finger at, point it right back at you and look inside. Because where is that coming from?
Even if you were to witness them in a room saying to someone, like, if you listen to what I say, you will perceive the directive. You will have the direct perception of emptiness. I couldn't be like, well, that's breaking it out.
Yeah, so I'd say what I would try to do in that situation is always do what's best for the most amount of people, right? So in that situation, accusing someone of breaking a vow probably won't do too much. But could you do something that protects the minds of both beings that you just witnessed, right? Could you say something to the person to appease them and be like, set things straight? And can you also do something for the person who you know or you perceive as just having lied? That's what I would do in that situation. Because you don't know if the other person heard those words the same way you did. Like, it gets that slippery.
Because it could be a Buddha pushing someone to the point where they have to defend their point of view. Say, no, but wait a minute. And
Yeah.
we just don't know the motivation. So the safest thing to do is to know more about this stuff so that you can chime in the conversation and try and help that person to reach nirvana.
Yeah.
Because if that actually is, if Supriya is a Buddha trying to help us, if she says something that seems funny, it's because she's trying to help us, and so we have to debate it. You have to go out and say, but I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said earlier that
Yeah.
it wasn't from its own side, or whatever
Yeah.
the case
Yeah.
is.
You have to use your, yeah. That's true.
I have a question,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Never mind. I'm sort of confused. And 16 is really, I'm partly confused, but,
This one?
in a way, who am I? You were talking about choosing who the most people are harmed if, anyway, accepting what belongs to the three jewels when someone presents it. But who exactly am I, even if I've taken vows and I'm aspiring to be enlightened and want everyone, who am I to determine such a thing? And isn't that sort of for me to be presumptuous that I can make a determination? Isn't that like partly in contradiction to emptiness, but also partly in contradiction to the whole spirit of like loving compassion and not being all about like.
Yeah. So what's implied in this vow is that you know that the person who's giving you the items, I know that they came here and they stole all those cushions. and then they're giving it to me because I'm starting my own studio, and they're like, here, go use these cushions, right? That is not with the spirit of enlightenment, right? So that is implied in this vow, is I know that that person took these things from the 3 jewels with the intention of taking them. So that's important.
And is any of the good deed factor come into play? Like one,
If it
they
did,
didn't
then
take
it wouldn't
from,
be breaking this
they
vow.
took it from Amazon, not 3 jewels. You know?
Well, that's not what it says in this vow. It says what belongs to the 3 jewels, not Amazon. That's why it says the root downfall of accepting what belongs to the 3 jewels when someone presents it to you. You can take from Amazon. They're very specific. Like I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying it's hard to break these root vows. It really is. The whole next class is actually about exactly how you need 4 mental attitudes in place to even break them. So it's really quite difficult too.
Well, I didn't know. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realize it literally meant our 3 jewels. I thought
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. No, I was just using the example of our 3 jewels. Remember the 3 jewels, so it can refer to any place where real Dharma is being shared. Real Dharma, as opposed to Amazon. Maybe some people see Amazon that way, but yes. Real Dharma being something that could get you out of suffering. That would be the 3 jewels, or it would be anything that, any representation of a Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha jewel, which we've gone over. So it's really specific. Okay, this one's gonna sound more complicated than it is. The root downfall of rejecting the practice of quietude and giving the possessions of meditators to those who practice recitation. It's very specific. Again, it just needs a little bit of decoding. So when you see quietude or meditators, it just means someone whose primary practice is meditation. Which there are certain Buddhists or certain spiritual practitioners, that's their thing, right? Meditate. Just withdraw yourself from the world and from the senses and meditate. Versus those who practice recitation, that has to do with people who study scripture. Or what we're doing, talk and debate.
Why doesn't it mention yoga?
I don't know. Well, probably because yoga in the Tibetan system is a secret practice. So it's not on the Bodhisattva.
When you say study scripture, isn't that what we're doing now? Is that
Exactly.
different from the
That's what we're doing now. So it's saying,
Got it.
so it's saying if we all got together and we went to another studio and we're like, you guys, all you do is meditation there. We're going to take all your cushions, bring them over to 3 jewels because we have a practice of recitation in scripture. Yeah. So that's all it's saying. Take away the possessions of meditators because they don't have enough scriptural knowledge and give it to those who are studying scripture. In the time of the Buddha, this probably played out in a very literal way amongst different groups of people and the way they studied. But I think we wage that war in our minds all the time when we judge other spiritual practitioners. Or when I judge other spiritual practitioners, at least. That's what I'm doing, right? I'm making value judgments in my mind of, oh, well, they don't meditate enough over there. Or they don't have scriptural access and knowledge the way we do.
So would it be like different types of meditation? Saying like, oh, that's not real meditation.
That wouldn't really be this particular vow. This vow is more pitting meditation against scriptural study,
Okay.
right?
But
That
they
would
should
still
go together.
definitely not be beneficial for your meditation practice if you have that.
So it's saying that they should go together, not separately.
This is just saying take away possessions from the meditators because they are not studying scripture and give it to people who are focusing on scripture. That's what the vows say.
Is this one also like a subtle Hinayana, Mahayana distinction?
I think it's less that. When Hector taught this class, he said it's really directed at people who have managed Dharma centers. So like Stephen would have the power to do that, like Stephen and Rachel, right, in the decisions they make. Which programs to fund versus not. You could think about it that way in the modern day.
What's like the ancient way?
In the ancient way, it would be literally taking the possessions from certain types of practitioners and giving them to others. Like
What?
waging war on certain practitioners and helping others.
So would it be like taking all the meditation cushions from meditators to give to us?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like going to Mindful down the street and being like, you guys just meditate. Take all their cushions, come bring it here. Breaking this stuff.
Well, I guess I was thinking too that like that thing where you're like when you ask your teacher a bunch of questions, it's better to sit and have your own realizations before you actually get to the root of what the question is, before bringing it to the recitation, meaning the person who's teaching. That's
cool.
Like sitting in quietude, like don't steal your opportunity or don't reject it.
That's cool.
Like in the possessions of meditators are like the realizations that you could have if you would sit in quietude with them before you would bring them to the.
That's a cool interpretation. Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay, are you ready for 18?
Yeah.
What, less than 1 minute? It's actually, okay, well, who remembers, remember I said something about vow 9 and 18.
They're the strongest, like the most powerful.
Why?
I do it. You didn't tell us that.
I might not have told you that part. Okay, yeah. They're the most important ones because they're the easiest to break. Because you don't need, we're going to go over it the whole next class, but there are these things called the 4 chains. So in order to break a vow, you need to have the 4 chains present, which means like 4 mental attitudes. It's like a mental attitude like, I know I'm breaking this vow. I feel so happy that I'm breaking this vow. I would do it again and again, and I'm not going to get any bad results from it. You need those attitudes there to actually break the vow. If you just accidentally, like if you out of carelessness break one of these vows, they actually say you're not breaking it. So that's something to think about. But vows 9 and 18, you don't need the 4 chains present in order to break those vows. So they're much more amplified.
You don't need what?
You don't need the 4 chains, which we'll go over next class, but they're 4 mental attitudes necessary to break a vow.
Like the example you just
Exactly.
gave.
Exactly. So what's vow number 9? And these are like the kickers. They're the things that,
Did you have the high star?
no?
Oh.
Wrong view. Good. Number 9 is wrong view. So thinking that things are self-existent. That they exist by themselves from their own side. That way, for everyone, all the time. Wrong view. In its purest sense, we talked about the implications of that. If you thought that, then you wouldn't believe in karma. And if you don't believe in karma, it's very hard to logically bring your mind to, oh, well, then karma extends from beginningless time to endless time, past and future lives, of course. Yes.
So on number 9,
Yeah.
say I take vows,
Uh-huh.
and because I've not directly perceived emptiness, sometimes, like, because we're forced to see things as
Mhm.
self-existent, you forget to hold a correct view, and you break that vow because you see things as self-existent.
Well, you don't break that vow doing that, right? Remember we talked about you break that vow from when in the bottom of your heart you believe karma doesn't exist. Past and future lives don't exist. That thing really isn't empty. Then you break that vow. But just our normal, no, we're having an incorrect view all the time. We're having wrong view all the time. We're going to get to 18 because it's a really sweet one. It really is. It's, I don't know if I'm allowed to play favorites with vows, but it might be my favorite one. So when you make the promise to become a bodhisattva, you actually promise to never stop trying. You promise, I will never discard this wish.
You would never what?
I'll never give it up. I'll never stop trying. I'll never discard the wish for enlightenment. And you make that promise when you become a bodhisattva. And I think it's beautiful. Like, this particular vow has saved me so many times. Because if something happens, if you really have this motivation when you take these vows, your mind will actually never let you give it up. Like, you're gonna be tested, you're gonna be put into hard situations regarding your spiritual path, right? Or something else. And this thought will pop into your mind of like, well, of course I need to figure it out. Of course I'm gonna get through it. I have to do it so I can help someone else. I have to do it so no one else has to go through this. And those thoughts, it's there, it's ingrained, and it's because you made this promise. You actually can't ever stop trying if you make this vow. They say if even for a second you think that, you you no longer are a bodhisattva, right? What makes a bodhisattva a bodhisattva?
Even for a second?
Even for a second. Yeah. It's what makes you realize that the vows aren't this list of rules, but they're actually a gift that you get to have. Like, imagine someone gives you this gift. I'm going to plant inside your mind that every action you do, every word you speak, every thought you have has in it the wish to get enlightened. And whether you know it or not, you're making that promise. It's like an infection. You become infected by it. You can't give it up. Yeah. This is my favorite one. But,
It's not just forgetting about it.
it's not forgetting about it, no.
It's like,
Because you will forget about it, and I don't think that's breaking the vow. I mean, I don't know, there wasn't any more commentary about it, it was just this. So, I don't know, I think you have to cook that one more. This one, the way I see it show up in my life is like, even if it's the second or third thought, as you go through life, every amazing thing you experience, you just want to give it away. And every challenge you come up against, there is this power that you have of, I'm going to figure it out because I promised I would. I made this promise. And it might not be the main motivation there, but it's always the second or third thought. That's how it comes up for me right now. But it means you can't stop believing in yourself.
Believing in yourself?
Yeah. You actually make that wish when you say, I want to become a bodhisattva.
I feel like this one kind of harkens to the joyous effort perfection too.
Yeah.
It's like it's really important to remember that if you're taking these vows, you can't forget this one.
Yeah. And it's cool
This is the one
too.
that's most applicable to our lives.
And not just this life, it's Bodhisattva vows stay with you across lives. So you've now infected your mind from now until whatever day you wake up, that you will work tirelessly to be of service to others. That's it. That's the only thing that's driving you. And it's going to feel contrived in the beginning. That's what my teacher always says. In the beginning, it's going to feel clunky and contrived and fake and like, what am I doing? And you do it. It's like dancing. It's like learning a new skill. It's yeah.
You said that you have to there's a ceremony and you have to tell your teacher which vows you've broken.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what it was about.
Yeah.
If you've broken this one, do you have to wait and then retake your vows all over again? Or because it says you're not bodhisattva, so technically, does that mean you break all the vows if you break this one?
You don't break this one. Just don't break it.
Yeah, no.
Would be my answer. I see what you're saying. The way I would work with this, it's like if you're showing up to a ceremony to confess, you're not actually breaking this vow. Like there's something in you which believes that it's worth cleansing your mind stream of negativity and trying to recharge it with positivity. So like that, I don't know, I really think of this one as like this gift, that it's not this thing you have to work too hard to try to keep, because it's what you're promising to, it's the essence of what you're promising to do. So all the other vows only make sense if you have this in your mind. And remember what we talked about in the ceremony, if you don't have this in your mind, the vows don't actually form in your being. So there's stories of people will take their Bodhisattva vows 1, 2, 3 times even. So you need to have that feeling of actually getting them, and they form in your mind stream. Yeah, I don't know if that really answered your question. I think before, we're going to get to that in a second, I just want to remind everyone, I'm going to talk to Stephen and G. I don't know what the schedule is going to be like in the next coming weeks, just with the state of our world. But technically, next week, it's not a normal ACI class like this. It's actually like a Dharma in practice workshop with G, which I think is cool because it's nice. We're halfway through the course. We have the root vows. So I know it's late. If anyone needs to go, please go. But if anyone has ideas for what you'd like to do in that workshop, that would be helpful for us. Because we haven't necessarily planned it. We want it to be something that's useful to all of you. Like, yes.
Vow book would be nice.
Okay, like how to keep a vow book?
Yeah, with these 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Combined
With the
individual
yep,
freedom ones.
yep.
Yeah.
How to do a 6 times a day book?
Yeah, how specific you get, how much time you spend thinking about it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. If there's anything else, let me know. And the other thing to keep in mind, I'll send it in the email this week, but if you are interested in taking vows at the ceremony, refuge and or bodhisattva, renewing or taking them for the first time, let me know, because there is some prep work we need to do and some details we need to know.